All right, hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on SERDP FY 2025 funding opportunities. My name is Laura Mack, and I will be moderating today's session. So we'll just get started in a few moments, but while we wait for others to join, I wanted to cover a few logistical items. So today's broadcast will be listen only. We will have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation, but you can submit a question using the Q&A box on the black control panel at the bottom of your screen at any time. And we'll try to answer all those questions just during the final Q&A session. We won't be able to answer questions about specific proposal ideas or technologies during this webinar. And if you run into any technical problems, that's when you can use the chat box on your control panel and someone from our team will help you. Please note that both the audio and the presentation of today's session will be archived on our solicitation webpage in case you would like to refer to them in the future. And with that, I'll just introduce our speakers for today. So we have Dr. Kim Spangler, the Executive Director of SERDP, Dr. Andrea Leeson, the Deputy Director of SERDP and the Environmental Restoration Program Manager, Dr. John LaScala, the Weapons Systems and Platforms Program Manager, Mr. Kevin Hires, the Resource Conservation Resilience and Climate Resilience Program Manager, and Dr. Dave Bradley, the Munitions Response Program Manager. Before I turn it over to Kim, I just want to remind you that, again, this is a listen-only session and to please use the Q&A box on the bottom of your screen to submit questions at any time. Over to you, Kim.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Great. Well, I want to warmly welcome everyone and thank you for joining us. I am enthusiastic about kicking off our FY25 SERDP solicitation cycle. As Laura mentioned, I'm the Executive Director for SERDP and also ESTCP, and just want to mention that it is such a great honor to work with you all in this position. So what we'll be doing today is we'll be introducing our FY25 solicitation, and as Laura mentioned, we'll be answering questions on it. A quick overview of SERDP and its companion program, ESTCP. These programs both sit at a very high level within the Office of Secretary of Defense, specifically for acquisition and sustainment. With the funding we have on these programs, we are setting the technical direction for the Department of Defense for the top priority environment, and in the case of ESTCP, we add installation energy issues. We have very frequent congressional and senior leadership interest. And in fact, SERDP is a tri-agency program. So not only do we have the oversight of DoD leadership, we are actually managed by the SERDP Council, which is a tri-agency program with the Department of Energy, the EPA, and there are also other leaders from the services on that council as well. So a lot of opportunity, but also a lot of responsibility. And it is difficult to describe how much we depend on the innovative work that you all bring to this program and bring to the Department of Defense challenges. So we have many folks within America that bring their innovation, and also we welcome our global partners into this program as well. I want to take a really quick side note here to talk about the accomplishments from FY23 in SERDP and companion program ESTCP. We wrote these all down this year, and when you hear them in aggregate, we are certainly grateful for all the amazing work that's been done here. So just to quickly go through some of the highlights, in FY23, we were able to leverage about a $1 million SERDP munitions response investment to avoid an over a $40 million cost for an FY 2023 Pearl Harbor dredging project. So we were able to use our innovation from munitions response to help with a real-time dredging project out in Hawaii. Also in FY23, the first PFAS-free firefighting foam was qualified, and that built off the work from over 70 SERDP environmental restoration and weapon systems and platforms projects. Also in 23, there was a final method that was published. This was an interagency effort with the EPA to measure PFAS in waters. And this is an issue of critical national importance. Also in FY23, we've received approval to reconstitute the SERDP Scientific Advisory Board for the first time since 2017. And what that means is that when folks propose to SERDP, their work is being vetted and shaped and guided through the advisement of folks that are appointed from the top scientists and engineers within the United States. Also in 23, 7 species were either delisted or downlisted following 10 years of investment. Sorry, threatened and endangered species were delisted or downlisted following 10 years of investment from the SERDP resource conservation projects. I'm almost finished here. We awarded $30 million in FY23 in congressional ads for PFAS and AFFF replacement, remediation, disposal, and cleanup. Also in 23, we hosted 9 strategic workshops. So this is where we promote interagency cooperation across the globe, where we determine, what the strategic outlook looks like for our mission critical issues. 2 other things I want to hit on is that we take very seriously our opportunity to collaborate and really work with our workforce here across the globe. So we were surprised to even find this out, but SERDP and ESTCP funded work is actually cited 10 times more than the average publication. And I really think that that speaks to the high quality technical rigor of the work that we fund in this program. And I'd also like to add, not only are we seeing great work that's being published and transitioned, we've also formed a really close partnership with DoD policy teams so not only are we developing technologies now, we're actually augmenting that work by codifying that into DoD policy, which is really helping our ability to transition and get these technologies out into the field. And so with that, again, I want to thank you all for joining us. I hope you see this as a high impact program that is made possible because of you all. And I will now turn it over to Dr. Leeson.
Great. Thank you, Kim, and thank you to everyone who's attending today. What I'd like to do before we get into a little more explicit description of our statements of need that we released is give you a little bit of overview of who we are, what we fund, because it provides context for the statements of need that have been released, which I think is helpful as you prepare your proposal. So as Kim mentioned, we have 2 companion programs, SERDP, the Strategic Environmental Research and Development Program, which is what I think you could consider as a traditional R&D program. This is the statement of needs and the solicitation that we'll be discussing today, all fall within SERDP. And both SERDP and ESTCP are the DoD's environmental technology programs. Now, the companion program to SERDP is ESTCP, which is the Environmental Security Technology Certification Program. This is a traditional demonstration validation program where the knowledge and the technologies that are developed under SERDP or under other research programs can come into ESTCP, where we can demonstrate and validate those technologies at closer to an actual size of a field scale. ESTCP has its own solicitation process, and that's staggered with SERDP, and we'll see that a little later in the year, and we'll have another webinar that's really discusses more directly what's going on with ESTCP. So under SERDP, we were established in 1991 by Congress. This is actually a partnership with the DoD, the Department of Energy, and the Environmental Protection Agency, and you will see that reflected throughout the management structure of the program. And the goal here is really to address high priority environmental science and technology areas that look at DoD unique issues or environmental issues with a large cost to the DoD. And certainly we have seen that issues that we have been addressing within the DoD have much broader applicability throughout the country. So how we function, if you are familiar with the DoD structure, we have our service requirements that come in. SERDP will fund basic and applied research up to advanced development. But at that point, we transition into ESTCP for more of the demonstration validation and the implementation of those technologies. I'd like to talk a little bit about the drivers for the research that we fund. We have various environmental and energy drivers, including installation resilience, range sustainability, wildland fire, and threatened and endangered species. And as you can imagine, these are very broad areas, and we cover a lot of ground when we're looking at these different environmental and energy drivers. We also deal with the reduction of current and future liability, and that can take two methods. One is that we're looking at controlling life cycle costs. So this is like a traditional pollution prevention program where we're looking at the elimination of chemicals of concern or hazardous materials and various operations on DoD installations. And we're looking to develop and assess alternative technologies and materials that can still have the same performance as these legacy materials and operations. And then we're dealing with the impact from past practices. And so that is an area where we're looking at chemicals of concern that have impacted groundwater, soil, sediments. It includes our unexploded ordnance or the UXO liability as well. And it also includes looking forward, dealing with what we consider emerging chemicals of concern. Our program area management structure, I put this on here so you understand how the statements of need that you'll see are managed as we go along. Of the program areas I list here, each one has its own program manager associated with it. We have weapons, systems, and platforms, environmental restoration, resource conservation and resilience, as well as munitions response. For those 4 program areas, they have a companion program as well under ESTCP with the same program manager. And then under ESTCP only, we have the energy and water program area and the climate resilience. Our focus areas are a little different. These are areas that we're focusing most intensely on in recent years, including PFAS and AFFF, installation resilience and installation restoration, corrosion and repair technologies, munitions response, sustainable energetics, and emissions and waste reduction. And so the solicitations you'll see and the associated statements of need fall into one of these different focus areas. We are able to fund, I generally say we can fund anyone, which means that we fund researchers within the Department of Defense, within our research laboratories and organizations there. We can fund other federal organizations and have funded many organizations throughout the federal government. And then we also fund universities and private sector organizations. There is a slight difference to the solicitations in terms of applying to those different solicitations, but I think it's pretty straightforward. So with our solicitations, first, I'll talk about the core solicitation. This forms the majority of what we fund and is the majority of the solicitations that you'll see. We make multiple awards per statement of need, and each of the program areas that you saw earlier will generally release multiple statements of need each year. Typically, the proposals are multi-year awards, and then we also have limited scope proposals, and we're going to talk about the limited scope in a little bit. And then we have the broad agency announcement, and that is applicable to universities, industry, and any non-governmental organizations. And then we have a federal call that is applicable to the Department of Defense and, of course, other federal agencies. We also have a SERDP exploratory development solicitation, which we call our seed solicitation. And these proposals that are requested under a seed are $250K or less and roughly 1 year in length. What we're looking for under the seed is innovative, high risk, high payoff work or proof of concept work. And there is also a BAA and a federal call under that. And so the seed has its own statements of need, and you'll see one of those will be discussed today. Limited scope proposals are similar to the seed in that they're 250K or less in about 1 year, but those are applicable to the core statements of need. So let me walk you through the SERDP core proposal selection process quickly. And of course, if you have questions about this, we can address that later. We develop our statements of need throughout the summer and then release those calls, the VAA and the federal call for proposals, late October, early November, which you are able to see now. That has been released. Pre-proposals are due in early January. As you'll see from the instructions, a pre-proposal is roughly a 5-page white paper, and the intent is for us to get a good idea of the technology or the project that you're proposing. We will evaluate those with the SERDP staff as well as the SERDP technical committees. The technical committees are made up of representatives from the DoD, DOE, and EPA, the partners in SERDP. And then we also have other federal agencies as appropriate, depending on the topic. So those personnel look at the pre-proposals. We then move on and request, we do a down select. Full proposals are requested by, they're requested by early February. They're due in March. And then all of the full proposals we receive go out to peer review. This is a traditional peer review, similar to what you would see for a journal article. That occurs through March and April. The high-ranking proposals from peer review go to the technical committee for their review over the summer, primarily looking at the DoD relevance at that point. Selection is made in July, and then final approval goes to the scientific advisory board in the fall. The seed process is similar. It's just these key areas that do not occur. There is no pre-proposal for a seed. We go directly to a shortened full proposal. It's 10 pages for a seed, 15 for a core. There is no peer review. The review is done completely by the staff, SERDP staff, and the technical committee. And seed proposals are not required to go before the scientific advisory board. The dates for the core solicitation are provided here. Most importantly, the pre-proposal is due on January 9th. Everything is submitted through SEMS, and instructions for that are provided in the instructions for submitting your proposal. And you'll see in the chat that the link to this website below has been provided there. If you'd like to look at that, all the details for the solicitation are available at that link. And then the official core solicitation dates for the full proposals, et cetera, are provided here as well. Seed solicitation dates are similar, but as I said, there is no pre-proposal stage, so we'll go directly into the full proposals that are due on March 14th in SEMS. Please note these submittal deadlines are a hard deadline. They must be submitted by this time and on this date to be considered within the review process. I'd like to talk a little bit about the success statistics for SERDP. These vary a little bit every year. This is showing you from our last solicitation in FY24. This is perhaps a little lower than normal, and I will say a lot of that is because there were several solicitations or statements of need that were released associated with PFAS, and we got a tremendous response. But unfortunately, of course, cannot select everyone. I think the key thing to remember here, though, is roughly to get to the final selection, we generally are looking at here 15 to 20% of proposals submitted get to the selection process. A little bit higher for a seed. Full proposal to selection, we have closer to roughly 30%. So let me talk a little bit about our selection criteria for the core solicitation. Most importantly, we look first off, is the proposal relevant? Does it address this objective of the statement of need? And is it basic research, applied research, or advanced technology development? So does it fit within SERDP? It's very important that proposals address the statement of need and the objective as it's laid out very explicitly If it does not, or if the proposal looks like it's more advanced than a SERDP research and development sort of proposal, the proposal would fail that criteria and it would not be evaluated further. So it's very, very important that the objective of the statement of need is addressed. Next, we look at technical merit. That is certainly the most important criterion that we look at after relevance. So we evaluate for the overall scientific and technical merit. We also then look at the personnel, qualifications, capabilities, et cetera. The cost in the pre-proposal, we're looking roughly as it does appear to be reasonable for the complexity of the proposal. In the pre-proposal, that cost is an estimate. We do not ask for a detailed cost at the pre-proposal stage, but we still are looking at that to see if it appears reasonable. And then finally, these criteria that you see here will also apply to the full proposal, except that in the full proposal, we will have the additional criterion of a transition plan, which we will look at. So for the seed proposal, you'll see that the selection criteria is very similar in terms of the relevance. And then again, technical merit, and then we're looking at the transition proposal potential. But what we're looking at in the transition proposal is really understanding that you understand what the critical proof of concept is for what you're proposing, and that if successful, you've identified the future development path. And so we're looking at a more narrow selection criteria for a seed. For a competitive proposal, what we are looking for is one that clearly addresses the statement of need. I can't emphasize that enough. We spend a tremendous amount of time developing the statement of need. We try to be very clear about what the objectives are, what the research questions are. So it's very, very important that your proposal clearly addresses it. We are looking that there is a demonstration of the understanding of the state of the science. The tasks that are proposed, we'd like to see those very clear and that it's hypothesis-driven work. Please put the hypothesis into the proposal. That is tremendously helpful. And then we expect with the proposals that most of the focus is on describing your technical approach, so that it's detailed and we can clearly understand what the experimental design is. So at this point, we're going to go into the statements of need. Each program manager is going to describe the statements of need that were released within their area. What I did want to mention is that, and I believe Laura mentioned this earlier, we are happy to address any questions about the process that I just described, as well as more broad questions about the statement of need itself. What we cannot do is answer questions about your specific proposed effort. If you have specific details or questions about what you're proposing, we cannot answer that, but we can answer anything about processes, or if you're not clear about something in a statement of need, we can address that as well. The relevant program manager is available in each statement of need, so you'll be able to get their contact information to reach out to them. For those of you who have been with us for a while, you will note that there is not a munitions response statement of need this year, and we're very excited to be moving more directly into ESTCP with this area, with a focus on transition to the user community through controlled site demonstrations and live site operations. So certainly look for that in the ESTCP solicitation that will be released in about a couple of months. So no favoritism. We'll start with environmental restoration just because I'm speaking. I am the program manager for environmental restoration. We've released 3 statements of need in this area this year. The first one is dealing with the fate, transport, and treatment of microplastics impacted with PFAS or potentially other chemicals of concern in the environment. And what we're interested in is both developing new and better analytical methodologies for detecting such substances, as well as understanding the fate and transport processes. And then we want to understand the impact of sorbed chemicals of concern on the fate and transport, of microplastics as well as the chemicals of concern and understanding associated degradation processes. And then finally, we're interested in remedial strategies for these materials. We have two statements of need that are directly associated with PFAS. And if it's not already there, you will see a link to the PFAS workshop report. I'm going to talk about that in a second. This first statement of need is dealing with improving the understanding of physical chemical properties of PFAS to better support our assessing the PFAS fate and transport in various environmental systems as well as in biota. And I cannot emphasize enough to take a look at this PFAS workshop report. This was a report that was based on a workshop that was held in 2022 to look at still data gaps that we had dealing with PFAS in the environment. One of the areas we spent a tremendous amount of time on was the data gaps associated with these physical and chemical properties of PFAS. So while it is summarized here, there's a lot more information about this in the workshop report, and I really encourage you to take a look at that. And likewise, we have a statement of need on treatment of PFAS impacted matrices. We have certainly been spending a lot of effort in this area to develop new or more efficient treatment of PFAS impacted matrices. We have spent a lot of time on this issue as well in the workshop report. We have made a tremendous amount of progress in the last several years on this area. So we envision that a small scale proof of concept efforts may be the most efficient for us to be looking at this time, because we have a lot of larger efforts going on, but we have not limited the statement of need to only small scale proof of concept efforts. If you have a larger scale effort, you are welcome to submit a proposal on that, but you do have to make it clear the benefits of a full scale project, not full scale in the terms of a demonstration, but a longer project versus a small proof of concept project. So at this point, let me introduce our next program manager, Kevin Hires, with the Resource Conservation and Resilience area, and he'll talk about some of the statements of needs in this area. Kevin?
Thank you, Andrea. Again, my name is Kevin Hires, and within the Resource Conservation and Resilience program area this year, we have also 3 solicitations, statements of need. Next slide, please, Laura. The first of which is seeking advancements in our understanding of non-indigenous invasive species, the surveillance technologies, mitigation of their impacts, and biosecurity measures affecting military readiness in the Indo-PACOM region. This SON seeks to advance the science of detection, survey, mitigation, and impacts. We're hoping to improve our understanding of invasive species ecology and management, improving understanding of both terrestrial and then aquatic and marine invasive species on Pacific Islands, advancing modeling of the potential economic and ecological impacts of those invasive species prior to their arrival with early phase detection, and then characterizing any nonlinear interactions between invasive species and many of the threatened and endangered species that the Department of Defense manages in the Indo-PACOM region. We do ask that efforts apply to one or more high priority invasive species already found on installations or species considered a threat were they to arrive on a military installation. Next slide. Second statement of need this year is looking for proposals that advance the sensing and modeling of micro and mesoscale climatological phenomena for both installation resilience and resource conservation. This statement of need is intentionally targeting both natural and built infrastructure to advance the application of low-cost commercial sensors and any associated micrometeorological modeling tools. We're trying to understand the feedback of built and natural landscapes on local and dynamic installation conditions at the micro and mesoscale. We're looking for proposals to analyze ecological variability, the results from fine scale variations in moisture and temperature, and then modeling critical micrometeorological processes into the future that are currently subgrid parameters to downscale products of climate, downscale climate modeling. Like ER, we are looking at this statement of need, preferring a limited scope, higher risk projects, but we will entertain full projects, but please provide a rationale as to why the fuller effort is justified. Next slide, please. Lastly, our third statement of need is addressing uncertainties in ecosystem carbon pools and fluxes. Of course, think of Earth as a system. The carbon pools are reservoirs and fluxes. There's movement of carbon across those reservoirs. We seek proposals to resolve significant uncertainties of carbon estimates in natural systems found on DoD installations and ranges. We want to improve the accuracy of estimates in carbon pools and fluxes and of the effects of the driving processes of carbon dynamics, things such as fire. Characterize and reduce the uncertainty associated with monitoring efforts used to estimate carbon and the uncertainty associated with ecophysiological processes that directly impact these pools and fluxes. We'd like proposers to think about addressing the size and distribution of these uncertainties in carbon and climate models, and then developing new approaches to create data sets or improved methods currently used in national or regional assessments and reporting. Next slide. I think now we'll turn the presentation over to Dr. John Lascala, who is the Program Manager for Weapons Systems and Platforms.
Thank you, Kevin. Yeah, so I'm John Lascala. I'm the Program Manager for Weapons Systems and Platforms. Let's go to the next slide. The first statement of need is in the Weapons Systems and Platforms program area is alternatives to emerging chemicals of concern in energetic formulations and energetic processing. Here we are seeking alternatives to emerging chemicals of concern in energetic formulations and energetics processing, as well as other munition components. Application areas of interest include binders and explosive materials, pyrotechnic binders, and pyrotechnic energetic formulations. We're also seeking alternatives to chemicals of concern used as burn rate modifiers, stabilizers, and certain energetics themselves. Additionally, we're seeking alternatives to chemicals of concern used in slurry processing of explosives, IM formulations, propellant binders, and others in energetic formulation and munition components. Because this statement of need is fairly broad, proposers must provide details on the environmental issues associated with the chemicals of concern and the potential environmental benefit associated with the proposed approach. Alternatives must be sustainable and have an environmental benefit relative to the state of the art. Alternatives should not be simply a different chemical of concern, as we don't want to swap one problem with another. The proposed work should evaluate the properties and performance towards munition use at an appropriate level of experimental and or computational methods, or using those to evaluate that. An appropriately scaled sustainability analysis should be proposed to assess the environmental benefit and economic potential of the alternative technology. The benefits of the effort should drive towards less environmental emissions, increase worker safety, improve performance, and reduce supply chain vulnerability. And note that the given work involves energetics and or munitions. CUI and classification must be addressed properly. Additionally, the project teams must have the approvals to handle energetics if the focus is on energetic materials or formulations as opposed to other munition components. Next slide. The next statement of need is on alternative demilitarization of explosives and gun propellants. We dispose of our energetics by either open burning or closed disposal technologies, or CDT. Open burning produces emissions into the environment that are not contained. Current closed disposal technologies are slow and expensive and cannot keep up with the required rate of demilitarization activities. Thus, we are seeking alternative demilitarization technologies that are safe, scalable, and cost-effective with application to conventional military munitions, including gun propellants, main charge explosives, and IM formulation, but specifically excluding plastic bonded explosives and liquid rocket propellants. The alternative technology must not involve open combustion or open burning. Don't consider the engineering to remove the energetic from the munition itself. That's beyond the scope of the statement of need. We do ask for a sustainability analysis on the alternative process to show its value, at least at the relative scale associated with the SERDP effort itself. Assume there is no interest in recycling or reuse of components or products that are formed. Thus, no work should be performed or proposed on recycling or reuse of any of the components or products. Because of the nature of energetics, proposal teams must have energetic handling capability and CUI safeguards, CUI being controlled unclassified information. And the effort here, the benefits basically are focusing on efforts to drive towards reduction of emissions from open burning, reduce cost relative, and greater throughputs relative to closed disposal technologies. Next slide. This next statement of need is on environmentally sustainable resins for coatings and sealants. Here we want to develop resins, polymers, and polymeric modifiers for military coatings and sealants that do not contain emerging chemicals of concern. Alternatives must be sustainable and have an environmental benefit relative to the state of the art. It should not be chemicals of concern, as we don't want to swap one problem with another. The properties of the coatings must be relevant to military weapon systems and platform coatings and/or military architectural coatings. An appropriately scaled sustainability analysis should be proposed to assess the environmental benefit and economic potential of the alternative technology. And the benefits of the effort should drive towards less environmental emissions, increase worker safety, improve performance, and reduce supply chain vulnerability for DoD coating application operations. Next slide. This next statement of need is entitled Sustainable Solvents and Vapor Degreasing and Other Cleaning and other cleaning applications. Here we want to develop vapor degreasing solvents and other cleaning fluids that do not contain emerging chemicals of concern. Prior vapor degreasing solvents such as TCE and PERC are highly chlorinated, and thus they were not flammable at the hot temperatures that are typically used in vapor degreasing operations. DoD has been doing a very good job of phasing out the use of TCE and PERC for most of their operations because of the toxicity environmental regulations associated with those. The new formulations are generally based on TDCE or trans 1,2-dichloroethylene, and they require additives to eliminate the flammability at the vapor degreasing temperatures that are typically used. Now, it is important that the additives form an azeotrope with the TDCE so that the concentration of the vapor in the bath don't change with time, which would otherwise enable the vapor or bath to become flammable. The properties of the solvent must be relevant to key cleaning standards and military specifications as listed in the statement of need. Alternatives must be sustainable and have an environmental benefit relative to the state of the art. It should not be chemicals of concern, as mentioned before. An appropriately scaled sustainability analysis is also requested. The benefits of the effort should drive towards less environmental emissions, increase worker safety, improve performance, reduce supply chain vulnerability, and the potential to be used for various other cleaning applications. Now, this is a seed statement of need because any proposed concept is likely to be high risk because we're kind of basically at a local optimum since we've shifted to more environmentally friendly alternative, the TDCE already. So further optimization is definitely going to be high risk. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Leeson. Next slide.
Thank you. Thank you, John. All right, we are nearing the end of our presentation. We did want to take a moment to mention our symposium that will be held the week after Thanksgiving. So it's coming up very, very quickly now. This is an excellent opportunity to see the results and the breadth of everything that we fund under SERDP, ESTCP, and we are holding this symposium jointly with also the OECIF program and the OEPF program. It will be a fantastic opportunity to really get an overview of all the different work that's being done in this area. Next slide. And so at this point, we will move into questions. They will be moderated by Lara here, and If you have a question, please put it into the Q&A. We prefer the Q&A over the chat room. And I'll turn it over to Laura to lead this.
Okay, so we'll start with a couple questions that are generally applicable to all submitters, and then we'll also include some specific to the statements of need. Okay, so first, this question's for Andrea. If there is a partnership between a federal agency and an academic institution, which calls for proposals does the pre-proposal get submitted under?
The pre-proposal should be submitted under the solicitation by which the lead is associated with. So if the lead of the proposal is a private entity from a university, it needs to go to the BAA. If the lead is a Fed, it needs to go under the federal call. We have most of our projects are probably partnered with a mix of federals and private entities. So just go by what the lead organization is.
Okay, next question. I'll do a few more that are generally applicable. Andrea, what is the average award amount?
So we don't, that is so variable in terms of the average award amount. It varies by program area, it varies by topic, etc. So we really hesitate to give that sort of information. However, I will state that generally runs probably 300,000 to 400,000 per year for a 3-year project or so, but you know, it can vary a little bit.
Okay, and then let's do another general question. Do limited scope proposals require peer review?
So I want to be really clear about the language. So a limited scope proposal comes in under the core solicitation, but is more of a proof of concept that's been submitted against a core statement of need. If it's limited scope, it goes to peer review. A seed proposal is different. That goes under a different solicitation. It just, you know, they have some similarities in that they're 250K or less and about a 1-year effort. Seed proposals do not go to peer review.
Okay, moving on to a question for Kevin. Should a proposal address all 4 specific research needs in the call for advancing sensing and micro mesoscale climate modeling for resilience and conservation to be successful?
Absolutely. It's we are looking for technologies that are a little more risk, which is why we've highlighted the opportunity, not the requirement for limited scope proposals, and understanding that being able to address one or more of those requirements is sufficient.
Okay, and another one I think for Kevin. How important are deliverables for proposals? For instance, for the invasive species Indo-Pacific call, would we need our proposal to develop control methods, or can the proposal be focused solely on data acquisition?
Deliverables are very important. Without getting into the goodness and badness of that, the merits of that, of data versus control in any one proposal, understanding crisply how you will address the Department of Defense need as outlined in the statement of work is essential. And each proposal will have a transition plan where the proposal team will have an opportunity to show how the work, whether it's data or control systems or modeling, address that Department of Defense need. So deliverables are very important for proposal teams to think about, particularly when they're addressing a demonstrated Department of Defense requirement, such as invasive species control in the PACOM regions.
All right, this next one is for Andrea. Can you submit both a core proposal and a limited scope proposal?
You can. We do not have a limit on how many proposals should be submitted, but do not submit the same idea to both. You need to choose one. So for example, you would not want to propose a limited scope on a particular research area and then write the same proposal except as a 3-year project. Don't do that. Choose one. But if you have 2 different ideas, you can submit 2 different proposals.
Okay, and then another for Andrea. Can SERDP fund a PI or co-PI who are currently funded through another SERDP project, either as a PI or co-PI?
Yes, we can do that. We do not put a limit on the number of awards.
Here, I'll move on to another probably quick one. Can a proposal build on a currently funded SERDP project or a proposal submitted to a different topic?
So it can certainly build on a currently funded SERDP project. That would make a lot of sense. We've certainly seen proposals that come in that are connected, to another proposal. I would recommend that your proposal, though, be able to stand alone. Makes it very difficult if you are relying on information from another proposal that has not been selected. Then you're tying your fate to another proposal, and really your project should be able to stand on its own. If the project that it's tied to is already funded, then you're good. But I would caution you about tying it to ones that have not been selected yet.
Okay, another for Andrea, but on a specific statement of need. There's a couple of questions here, so I'll just pose them all to you, but let me know if you'd like me to repeat any. So on treatment of PFAS impacted matrices, can you please say more about what you define as a small scale demonstration versus a larger scale demonstration? Can you explain what larger scale demonstration technologies are already underway? And finally, what are the biggest gaps you are seeing in your current candidates? And more specifically, what are you hoping to find in this SON that you haven't already been close to accomplishing with other projects?
All right. So let me first say I regret using the word demonstration when I was talking. I should not have used that word. So let's perhaps step back from the idea of a small scale versus a larger scale demonstration. Under SERDP, we're doing R&D. So most of the projects that we fund under this are really bench scale sort of studies, where we're trying to work out the fundamentals of a technology before we even consider going to the field. So I would say when we're looking at, again, a treatment, we're looking at perhaps from small scale, perhaps even batch studies, up to perhaps mesocosm scale, depending on where you're at with the development of a technology. I want to retract that I used the word demonstration at all when I was talking about this. In terms of what larger scale demonstration technologies are already underway, there are many. What I'm going to ask is someone on the Nobles team, if they could put the link to that PFAS and graphic that we have on our website into the chat, I would appreciate it. But I would recommend you go to our website, to the SERDP and ESTCP website. You can look for the PFAS and AFFF topic area, and within there, there is an interactive graphic that shows all the topics we've released over the years. And if you click on a box, it'll show you all the projects we are funding. Everything we fund gets its own project webpage. Every final report that comes out gets posted there. So that's probably the best place to go to get the most information about what's going on right now. And then in terms of gaps, so two things here. We put in the chat earlier a link to the workshop report that was published in 2022. That is a great place to look at what the state of the art was at that time, and it wasn't that long ago, and where we published a lot of data gaps of what we see with different technologies. And what we're looking for in this statement of need is we assume we don't know everything, and that's why we put these solicitations out there. And so we're keeping it open for new ideas that may have not been considered before for a technology or significant improvements on existing technologies. Laura?
Okay, this next question is for John. Where can potential applicants look for information on currently used military coatings and propellants?
Okay, so I'm going to separate those because two completely different technology areas. As far as military coatings, the coatings that we're talking about are generally cross-linked polyurethane type systems. often with some polyurea character, very akin to automotive type of coating. So you can look into that aspect. But the other is you can do a Google search on the assist military specifications, and that will bring up the assist website, which you can then type in information on each of the ASTM specifications that were listed in the statement of need to get more information about the particular properties that they're looking for in each of those coating systems. So that's certainly a recommended thing there. As far as the propellants and explosive type materials, I'm not going to give any of that information out on this type of chat. That's something I'd say just research the area. Research the area the best you can.
Okay, this next question is for Kevin. For the Indo-Pacific invasive species statement of need, is there a published list of high priority species, or would those species be more informally identified by direct communication with the Indo-Pacific DoD contacts, or as described in the workshop report?
There's no one definitive list. I am going to post in the chat resource through the pest management board that has a variety of documents that proposers can reference. Certainly the Indo-PACOM invasive species workshop document referenced in the statement of need is going to be a good resource, but we want the proposers, each proposal to justify why the endangered or the invasive species chosen is of relevance to DoD, and that's going to be an important connection for each proposal to make.
Okay, this next question is more general for Andrea. Is there a budget cap for core proposals?
We touched on this perhaps a little bit earlier when we were talking about an average range, and I would say we don't have a budget cap officially. It's certainly a factor that we look at in terms of the cost, but what we're looking for first and foremost is the cost that's proposed commensurate with the level of effort that's also proposed. Does it make sense? So I wouldn't say we have any official cap, but certainly once the cost gets higher as well, there's probably a higher level of scrutiny to make sure that what's being proposed is reasonable. Cora?
Okay, another general question. If a pre-proposal is not selected for full proposal, is feedback from the reviewers provided?
We generally are unable to provide feedback on the pre-proposals. It's actually just a staffing issue. We simply don't have sufficient staff to provide comments back on all of those.
Okay, this next one's for Kevin. Should a proposal for advancing sensing and micro mesoscale climate modeling for resilience and conservation address both natural and built environment?
No, we wanted to broadly open this topic up because there are applications for the built environment as well as the natural environment, and being able to address both installation resilience and conservation issues separate. So it's likely that proposals will pick either or, and that is fine.
Okay, this next one's for Andrea. Are you looking for a short-term proposal for the microplastics and PFAS on? This is not expected to be ready for a full proposal effort at this time.
So that would apply under the limited scope. And yes, we're accepting limited scope proposals. Now, if you look in a statement of need, you will see a description of your options for the type of proposal. So under our statements of need at the end, it will tell you if you're putting in a standard, if you can put in a standard or a limited scope. Limited scopes look like seeds. They are treated a little different. But a limited scope is also a 250K or less proposal that's roughly a 1-year level of effort. Laura?
Another general question. Can you comment on the need for preliminary data when considering a full or limited scope proposal?
Is that for me or was that
Yes,
for?
sorry.
Okay, that's all right. So preliminary data is good if you are describing something that is completely new, being able to show that you've done some preliminary testing, and we do allow for a 3-page attachment to provide some preliminary results is great. If you already have publications about preliminary work, you can also cite the work in those publications. It's not required. Occasionally we can certainly see that you might have some very new proof of concept idea that you want to propose. If you can show the supporting information for why you believe this is viable, that also can work. So I think I'm getting down to, we have flexibility in that, and it's not a hard requirement.
Okay, this next one's for John. This is probably explained in the DNEX documents, but how detailed should the sustainability analysis be? Do you expect an ISO compliant life cycle assessment?
Yeah, so this is a research and development effort. So we're not expecting this to be a full life cycle analysis or sustainability analysis of a product. It needs to be appropriate for the level to help make decisions to where we're going in the future. So for example, if we find that something has only, say, a 10% environmental benefit, we're only reducing the amount of a toxin by 10% in a product, that's not likely going to be very beneficial from the sustainability analysis perspective that's done, because elimination is a far better solution, for example, or maybe 10% doesn't take you down below a particular threshold, but if it does take you below a certain threshold, then maybe it's very beneficial. So that sort of thing, and the what that means in terms of where the sustainability analysis of the particular solution really means a lot to where we would then go in the next stage. So some level of analysis is what we're looking for. And again, it is described to some degree within those DNEX documents.
Okay, and I know we're running up on time, so we'll do a couple more questions and then we'll start to wrap up. This one's for Kevin. For the carbon pools and fluxes statement of need, are there high priority ecosystems that you want carbon estimates for, such as grasslands, coral reef, seagrasses, or kelp?
It's going to be up to the proposer to justify their choice of ecosystem relative to its, it commonly occurring on DoD installations or in areas of high concentrations of DoD installations. We do encourage proposers to think carefully about how the ecosystem that they are proposing to study does relate to the Department of Defense requirements in that area or in affected areas. But we do not have a specific list of key geographies for this SON that we would point to.
Okay, this next question is to Andrea. Is it encouraged to contact the program manager before submitting the pre-proposal to see if the chosen research topic is valid according to the statement of need?
It is strongly discouraged for you to do that. We do not vet proposals before they are submitted. As you can imagine, this would certainly give an advantage to someone who did that. So no, do not contact the program manager for those sorts of questions.
Let's try to fit in one more question. Another for Andrea. Are applications from researchers based at private organizations from outside the United States considered eligible for funding?
They are. We do fund many international organizations, and likewise the lead investigator. We do not have a requirement that they be a United States citizen as well, so that is possible.
Okay, and we're right about time almost, so that was going to be the last question I was going to pose. We received lots of questions, especially ones that were specific to statements of need. So if you do have any questions that we weren't able to get to, you can please, reach out to our general email and we will get that, answer you accordingly and work with the program managers. And so finally, I just wanted to remind everyone that a copy of the recording will be available on the website also, just to review, and same with the slides. And with that, I guess, Andrea, Kim, any final wrap up?
I certainly wanted to thank everyone for participating today. And as Laura mentioned, we were not able to get to all the questions, and I do apologize that we didn't have the time. But please reach out directly to the program managers if you have additional questions for the ones we couldn't get to today. Thank you.
All right, that concludes today's webcast. Thank you everyone for joining.